The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and tension that September evening on my ranch in Hollow Creek, Montana. I'm Caleb Harrow, and this patch of earth 160 acres of rolling hills, stubborn grass, and a creek that sings when the wind's just right has been in my family for 3 generations. It's not just land. It's blood, sweat, and the kind of stubborn pride that keeps a man grounded. But that evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, I saw 3 figures crest the hill in a black SUV, their headlights slicing through the dusk like knives. They weren't neighbors. They weren't friends. They were from the Hollow Creek Homeowners Association, men in crisp uniforms, armed with clipboards and arrogance, come to tell me my life wasn't mine anymore. I was mending a fence post when their vehicle rolled up, tires crunching gravel like they owned the place. The lead guard, a stocky man with a buzz cut and a smirk, stepped out first. "Mr. Harrow," he called, voice sharp like he was scolding a child. "You've ignored our notices. This land's under HOA jurisdiction now. You're in violation." Violation. The word hit like a slap. I'd never signed their papers, never bent the knee to their rules about fence heights or barn colors. This was my ranch, not some suburban cul-de-sac. But the HOA had been creeping into Hollow Creek, swallowing up small farms with their regulations, their fines, their threats. And now, they'd come for me. I straightened, my hands still gripping the post-hole digger, its weight familiar and grounding. "You're on private property," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Leave." Buzzcut laughed, a short, ugly sound, and gestured to the others. One held a camera, recording, while the third, a wiry guy with cold eyes, rested his hand on a holstered pistol. They weren't here to talk. They were here to take. "We've got authority," Buzzcut said, holding up a sheaf of papers. "Court order. Your land's been annexed. You'll comply, or we'll make you." My heart pounded, but not from fear. It was rage, pure and hot, boiling up from the dirt beneath my boots. This wasn't just about me. It was about my grandfather, who'd broken his back clearing this land. My father, who'd taught me to listen to the wind and trust the earth. And my daughter, Ellie, who loved this place as much as I did. They thought they could waltz in, wave their papers, and erase us. Not today. Not ever. I stepped forward, the digger still in hand. "Last chance," I said. Buzzcut's smirk faltered, but he didn't back down. "We're authorized to use force," he said, nodding to the wiry one, who drew his gun. That's when I knew this wasn't a negotiation. It was a war, and I wasn't about to lose. The next few seconds were a blur. I swung the digger, not to hit but to warn, the metal singing through the air. The wiry guard flinched, his gun wavering. Buzzcut shouted something, but I didn't hear it over the blood roaring in my ears. I dropped the digger and grabbed the rifle leaning against the fence, loaded. Always ready, because out here, you never know when a coyote's coming for your calves. "Get off my land," I roared, leveling the barrel. They froze, eyes wide, realizing I wasn't bluffing. The camera guy fumbled, still recording, but I didn't care. Let them have their footage. This was my home, and I'd defend it with everything I had. They didn't leave. Instead, Buzzcut took a step closer, his voice low and venomous. "You're making a mistake, Harrow. You can't fight progress. Progress. That's what they called it's stripping away freedom for cookie-cutter rules and gated communities." I cocked the rifle, the sound sharp in the quiet. "Try me," I said. And that's when it all went to hell. The wiry guard lunged, thinking he could catch me off guard. He was wrong. I sidestepped, Years of wrestling steers giving me the edge, and brought the rifle but down hard on his wrist. He screamed, the gun clattering to the dirt. Buzzcut charged next. But I was ready, driving my shoulder into his gut, sending him sprawling. The camera guy bolted for the SUV, yelling about calling for backup. I didn't care. I stood over the two guards, chest heaving, rifle still in hand. You tell your bosses. I growled. This ranch stays mine. They scrambled up, clutching injuries, and stumbled back to their vehicle. As the SUV peeled out, kicking up dust, I saw the camera guy still filming through the window. Good. Let the world see what happens when you come for what's mine. But as the taillights vanished, I knew this wasn't over. The HOA wouldn't stop. They'd come back harder, meaner, with more than just 3 guards. And I'd be ready. I turned back to the ranch, the weight of the rifle heavy in my hands. Ellie was at the house, probably watching from the porch, her eyes wide with questions I didn't want to answer yet. The land stretched out around me, quiet now, but whispering its own defiance. This was just the beginning, and I'd fight for every inch of it legally, physically, whatever it took. The next morning, the air felt different, sharper, like the world was holding its breath. I woke before dawn. The memory of last night's standoff burned into my mind. My knuckles still ached from gripping the rifle, and my chest carried a weight that wasn't just exhaustion. Hollow Creek wasn't a big town, but news traveled fast, and by the time I'd fed the cattle and checked the fences, I knew the HOA's version of events would be spreading like wildfire. They'd paint me as the villain, some unhinged rancher waving a gun at innocent men doing their jobs. But I wasn't the one trespassing. I wasn't the one threatening a man's home. Ellie was quiet at breakfast, pushing her eggs around her plate. She was 16, sharp as a tack, with her mother's green eyes and a stubborn streak that matched mine. Dad, she said finally, are they coming back? I wanted to lie, to tell her everything was fine, but she deserved better. Probably, I said, setting my coffee down. But we're not backing down. She nodded, her jaw tight, and I saw the fire in her I'd always been proud of. This wasn't just my fight, Anna Maria, it was ours. I headed to town to see Amos, my old friend and the only lawyer in Hollow Creek who'd take on a case like this. His office was a cramped room above the feed store, smelling of dust and old books. Amos, gray-haired and wiry, looked up from his desk as I walked in. Heard you sent some HOA boys running, he said, a glint in his eye. Care to tell me before I hear it from the sheriff? I recounted the night before the guards, the threats, the gun. Amos listened, scribbling notes, his face growing darker with every word. When I finished, he leaned back, whistling low. Caleb, you've poked a hornet's nest. The HOA's got money, lawyers, and half the county council in their pocket. But you've got something they don't. What's that? I asked, already knowing the answer. Truth, he said. And a deed that says this land's yours, free and clear. They can't annex what you never signed over. He pulled out a file, thick with papers. I've been digging since you got their first notice. The HOA's been pulling this stunt across the county, bullying small ranchers, claiming jurisdiction based on a shady rezoning vote nobody remembers. But your land, it's outside their boundary. They've got no legal claim. I felt a spark of hope, but it was tempered by reality. They had a court order, Amos, and they weren't asking nicely. He nodded, flipping through his notes. Likely forged or bought. I'll file an injunction. Get that order tossed. But Caleb, you need to be ready. They'll spin this. Say you attacked them. That footage they took. It's already circulating. He turned his laptop toward me, showing a grainy video on a local news site. There I was, rifle in hand, looking like some outlaw from a bad western. The headline screamed, "Rancher threatens HOA officials in violent clash." My stomach twisted. "They're lying," I said, my voice low. Amos shrugged. "They're good at it. But we'll fight back legally. Get me everything you have, deeds, letters, notices, and stay calm. No more swinging diggers." I nodded, but inside, I was burning. This wasn't just about me, Anna Maria, it was about every rancher, every farmer, every person who'd ever had their life's work threatened by suits who thought they could buy the world. Back at the ranch, I found Ellie on the porch, scrolling her phone. "Dad, look at this," she said, holding it up. Post on X, already shared hundreds of times. Showed the same video with comments calling me everything from a hero to a lunatic. "People are talking," she said, her voice a mix of worry and pride. "Some are on your side." I glanced at the screen, seeing hashtags like Stand with Caleb and HOA Tyranny. It was strange, knowing strangers were watching, judging, picking sides. But it gave me an idea. "Ellie, you're good with that phone," I said. "Can you tell our story? The real one?" She grinned, a spark lighting her eyes. Already started. By evening, she'd posted a video of her own, a shaky shot of the ranch, the creek, the cattle, with her voiceover explaining how the HOA was trying to steal our home. She didn't mention the rifle or the fight, just the truth, a family fighting for what's theirs. It was raw, honest, and by nightfall, it had more views than the HOA's smear. But the HOA wasn't done. That night, a new notice arrived, taped to my gate, a summons to court, claiming I'd assaulted their guards. The date was set for 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to prove I was in the right or lose everything. I stood there, the paper trembling in my hand, the stars cold and unyielding above. This was my home, my legacy, and I'd fight for it, not just with fists or guns, but with the truth Amos promised we had. The war was just beginning, and I was ready to counterattack. The days that followed were a storm of preparation and paranoia. Every creak of the gate, every shadow on the hill, had me reaching for the rifle. I wasn't sleeping, much too busy scouring old deeds with Amos, digging through county records, and watching Ellie's posts gain traction online. Her video had sparked something bigger than I'd expected. Folks from all over Montana, even beyond, were sharing stories of their own run-ins with HOAs and developers. Ranchers, farmers, people like me who'd felt the squeeze of progress choking out their way of life. It was humbling, but it also meant the HOA was watching. And they weren't happy. Amos called me into town a week after the standoff. "Good news and bad," he said, sliding a stack of papers across his desk. "Good. I got the court order they waved at you thrown out. It was a sham signed by a judge who's been on their payroll for years. Bad, they've doubled down. They're suing you for assault, property damage, and emotional distress." He snorted at that last one. "They're also pushing for an emergency rezoning vote to annex your land retroactively. County council's meeting in 3 days." I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. "Can they do that?" Amos's face was grim. "They're trying. They've got money, Caleb, and money buys votes. But we've got something they don't. Evidence." He tapped the papers. "Your deed's ironclad, and I found records showing they've been fudging boundaries for years. We take this to the council. We can stop them cold." I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead to the council meeting. It wouldn't just be about papers and loss, it'd be a showdown. A chance to face the HOA's suits and their bought and paid for allies head-on. I spent the next 2 days preparing. Not just with Amos, but with Ellie and a handful of neighbors who'd started showing up at the ranch. There was Marta, who ran the dairy farm down the road, and Jed, a grizzled horse trainer who'd lost half his land to the HOA's tactics a year back. They were angry, ready to fight, and their support felt like armor. The council meeting was held in the Hollow Creek Community Center, a low brick building packed with folding chairs and the smell of burnt coffee. I walked in with Amos, Ellie at my side, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. The council sat at a long table up front, 5 members, 3 of whom I knew were in the HOA's pocket. The HOA's lawyer, a slick man named Grayson with a smile like a snake, stood at a podium, spinning a tale of me as a violent renegade who'd attacked innocent guards. He played the video again, edited to make me look like I'd swung first. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others glaring at me. Amos took the floor next, calm but fierce, laying out the truth, the fake court order, the illegal annexation, the HOA's history of bullying. He held up my deed, its yellowed edges a testament to its age and strength. This land belongs to Caleb Harrow, he said, his voice carrying. Not to suits who think they can buy a man's legacy. A few folks clapped, but the council's faces stayed stone cold, except for one Mrs. Delaney, an older woman who'd always been fair. She was listening. Then it was my turn. I'm no speaker, but I stood up, my hands steady despite the nerves. This isn't just about my ranch, I said. It's about all of us. About the land we work, the lives we build. They want to take that, turn it into strip malls and gated estates. I fought for my home, and I'll keep fighting legally, fairly, but fiercely. Because if they can take mine, they can take yours. The room erupted, some cheering, others shouting against me. Grayson smirked, but I saw Mrs. Delaney's eyes soften. The vote was close, too close. 3 for the HOA's rezoning, 2 against. Mrs. Delaney's vote was the tiebreaker. She looked at me, then at Grayson, and said, "No. The Harrow land stays free." The room exploded again, but this time, the cheers were louder. Grayson's face twisted, and he stormed out, muttering about appeals. Amos clapped my shoulder, and Ellie hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. We'd won this round, but the war wasn't over. The HOA would come back, and I knew they'd hit harder next time. That night, back at the ranch, I sat on the porch with Ellie, the stars bright above us. "You did good, Dad," she said. I smiled, but my heart was heavy. The truth was on our side, but truth alone wasn't enough. Not when money and power were in play. I'd need more than words and deeds to keep this land. I'd need to fight smarter, fiercer, and with every ally I could muster. The council victory was sweet, but it was like winning a battle only to hear the enemy's war drums growing louder. The HOA didn't slink away, they doubled down. 2 days after the vote, a new notice arrived, this time from a state-level court. They were escalating the assault case, claiming I'd caused significant bodily harm to their guards and demanding $500,000 in damages. They also filed for an injunction to freeze my assets, including the ranch, until the case was settled. Amos called it a scare tactic, meant to bleed me dry with legal fees. But scare tactics only work if you're scared, and I was far past that. I started rallying the troops. Ellie's videos had drawn a crowd, local ranchers, farmers from neighboring counties, even a few city folks who'd seen her posts and hated what the HOA stood for. We met at the ranch, a makeshift war council in my barn. Marta brought her brother, a tech guy who dug up dirt on the HOA's parent company, a real estate giant called Pinnacle Development. Jed brought maps, showing how Pinnacle had been buying up land around Hollow Creek, piece by piece, to build a luxury resort. My ranch was the last holdout, the key to their plan. That's why they were coming so hard. We need to hit them where it hurts, Marta said, her voice steady. Public pressure. Their investors won't like bad press. Ellie nodded, already typing on her phone. I can make more videos. Get people talking. Maybe get a reporter out here. I looked at them, these people risking their necks for me, and felt a swell of gratitude. Let's do it, I said. But we stay smart. No lies. No stunts, just the truth. Loud and clear. Ellie's next video went viral. She filmed it at dawn, the ranch glowing golden, with me talking about my grandfather's struggle to keep this land through droughts and debt. I spoke about the HOA's lies, their greed, and how they were stealing not just land but lives. By the next day, it had thousands of shares, and a reporter from a Billings news station reached out. They wanted an interview, on the ranch, live. It was a chance to tell our story to the world, but it was also a risk. The HOA would be watching, ready to twist every word. The day of the interview, the ranch was buzzing. Neighbors showed up with signs, "Save our land," and "Stop HOA greed." And the reporter, a young woman named Sarah, set up her camera near the same fence where the standoff happened. I told her everything, the guards, the fake court order, the council vote. She listened, her face serious, and asked, "Why fight so hard, Caleb? Why not sell and move on?" I looked at the land, the hills my daughter loved to ride across, and said, "Because this isn't just dirt. This home, this family, this who we are." The interview aired that night, and the response was overwhelming. X lit up with support, and a hashtag Hollow Creek Strong started trending. But the HOA wasn't silent. They released a statement, calling me a dangerous extremist and claiming their guards were traumatized. They even leaked medical reports, exaggerated accounts of broken bones and concussions. I knew the truth. Those guards had walked away, bruised but whole, but the lies stung. Worse, I got a call from Amos. The state court had fast-tracked the assault case. Trial was in a week. That night, I found Ellie crying in her room. "They're saying you're a monster," she said, showing me her phone. Comments on X, vicious ones, called me a thug, terrorist. I hugged her, my heart breaking. "They're scared, Ellie," I said. "Scared of the truth. We keep fighting." She nodded, wiping her eyes, and I saw her fire return. But I knew we were on thin ice. One wrong move, one bad day in court, and the ranch could be gone. The trial loomed like a storm cloud. Amos prepped me hard, drilling me on what to say, what to avoid. "Don't lose your temper," he warned. "They'll bait you." I nodded, but inside, I was a coiled spring. The HOA wasn't just fighting for my land, they were fighting to destroy me, to make an example of anyone who dared stand up. But I wasn't alone anymore. The barn meetings grew, the support online swelled, and every night, I looked out at the ranch, the creek whispering its strength. We were ready for the courtroom, ready for the fight, and I'd be damned if I let them win. The courtroom in Billings was a cold, sterile place, all polished wood and flickering fluorescence. I sat next to Amos, my best shirt feeling too tight, my hands clenched under the table. Ellie was in the gallery, her face pale but fierce, surrounded by Marta, Jed, and a dozen others who'd driven hours to be there. Across the aisle, The HOA's team looked like they'd stepped out of a corporate ad. Grayson, their lawyer, in a suit that cost more than my truck, flanked by the 3 guards from that night. Buzzcut's arm was in a sling, a prop for sympathy, I was sure. The wiry one glared at me, his wrist bandaged. The camera guy just looked nervous. The judge, a stern woman named Hargrove, called the court to order. Grayson went first, painting a picture of me as a violent recluse who'd ambushed innocent men doing their duty. He played the video again, slowed down to make every move I made look calculated. Vicious. Caleb Harrow is a danger, he said, his voice smooth as oil. He attacked our clients without provocation, endangering lives and defying the law. The guards testified next, their stories so rehearsed they could have been reading from a script. Buzzcut claimed I'd swung first, that he'd feared for his life. The wiry one said I'd broken his wrist with malicious intent. The camera guy mumbled about being traumatized. I wanted to shout, to call out their lies, but Amos's hand on my arm kept me quiet. When it was our turn, Amos stood, his voice steady but sharp. This case isn't about assault, he said. It's about greed. Pinnacle Development, through the Hollow Creek HOA, has been illegally targeting Caleb Harrow's ranch to complete their resort project. They sent armed men to his property, uninvited, with a forged court order. He presented the evidence, my deed, the fake order, county records showing Pinnacle's land grabs. The gallery murmured, and I saw Judge Hargrove's eyes narrow, listening. I took the stand next, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I told the truth, how the guards came at dusk, how they drew a gun, how I defended my home. I didn't want to fight, I said. I just wanted them gone. This ranch is all I have of me daughter's future, my family's past. I acted within my rights. Grayson cross-examined me, trying to trip me up, asking why I hadn't called the sheriff, why I'd grabbed a rifle. Because they weren't asking nicely, I said, meeting his eyes. They came to take what's mine. A few people in the gallery clapped, and Hargrove banged her gavel. Ellie testified last, her voice clear despite her nerves. She talked about the ranch, about growing up there, about the HOA's threats. My dad's not a monster, she said, tears in her eyes. He's protecting our home. The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Even Grayson looked rattled. The trial stretched over 3 days, each one a battle of words and evidence. Amos was relentless, dismantling the HOA's case piece by piece. He brought in Marta, who testified about her own run-ins with Pinnacle, and Jed, who showed how his land had been taken through similar tactics. The reporter, Sarah, had published a follow-up story, and its impact was clear. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, their signs echoing Ellie's hashtags. The pressure was mounting, and I could see it in Grayson's tight smile, in the guards' shifting eyes. But the HOA wasn't done fighting. On the final day, Grayson produced a surprise witness, a county official who claimed my land had been accidentally included in a rezoning plan years ago, giving the HOA legal grounds to act. Amos objected, calling it a last-minute fabrication, but the damage was done. The gallery buzzed, and I felt the ground shift under me. Judge Hargrove adjourned for deliberation, her face unreadable. As we left the courtroom, Ellie grabbed my hand. "We're not losing, Dad," she whispered. I wanted to believe her, but the weight of that official's testimony felt like a noose tightening. That night, back at the ranch, couldn't sleep. I walked the land, the creeks murmur a faint comfort. The HOA had money, power, and lies, but we had truth, and we had people. The question was whether that would be enough. Tomorrow, The judge would decide. And with her decision, the fate of everything I'd fought for. The morning of the verdict, Hollow Creek felt like it was holding its breath. I drove to Billings with Ellie, the truck rattling over familiar roads, my mind racing with what-ifs. The courtroom was packed: neighbors, reporters, even strangers who'd seen Ellie's videos or Sarah's stories. The HOA's team sat stiffly, Grayson's usual smirk replaced by a tense line. The guards avoided my eyes. I sat next to Amos, my hands steady but my heart pounding like a drum. Ellie squeezed my arm, her faith in me a lifeline. Judge Hargrove took the bench, her face as unreadable as ever. She began with the assault charges. The evidence shows Caleb Harrow acted in defense of his property, she said. The HOA's agents entered without consent, armed and threatening. The charges of assault and property damage are dismissed. The gallery erupted, cheers drowning out Grayson's objections. I exhaled, relief flooding me, but Hargrove wasn't done. On the HOA's claim to my land, she paused, her eyes scanning the room. The rezoning evidence is troubling, she said. The county official's testimony suggests irregularities, but it's not conclusive. However, the Harrow deed is clear, and no valid annexation occurred. The ranch remains his. I closed my eyes, the weight lifting off my chest. Ellie hugged me, tears streaming, and Amos clapped my back, grinning. But Hargrove raised a hand for silence. This court also finds evidence of misconduct by Pinnacle Development and the Hollow Creek HOA, she said. I'm recommending a state investigation into their practices. The gallery roared again, and this time, Grayson's face went pale. The guards slunk lower in their seats. It wasn't just a win, it was a blow to the heart of their empire. Outside, the protesters cheered as we emerged, signs waving like flags of victory. Sarah's camera caught it all, her voice steady as she reported live. A small-town rancher takes on a corporate giant and wins. Ellie was beaming, already posting to X, and I saw Marta and Jed embracing, their own hopes rekindled. But as we drove back to the ranch, I knew the HOA wouldn't go quietly. They'd lost this battle, but their war chest was deep, and they'd come for revenge. The next week was a whirlwind. The state launched its investigation, and Sarah's reporting kept the pressure on, uncovering more of Pinnacle's shady deals. Ranchers across Montana started fighting back, inspired by our story. Ellie's videos became a rallying cry, and donations poured in to help with legal fees, small sums from strangers who believed in us. But the HOA struck back, filing an appeal and sending new notices to other ranchers, trying to scare them into submission. They even sent a private investigator to snoop around my land. But Jed spotted him and ran him off with a shotgun blast into the air. I started to see the cracks in their armor. Pinnacle's investors were getting nervous, stock prices dipped as bad press piled up. Marta's brother found emails linking Grayson to the county official who'd testified, hinting at bribes. Amos filed a countersuit, alleging harassment and fraud, and the tide began to turn. But I wasn't naive. This was a long fight, and every victory came with a cost. I was tired, bone deep tired, but every time I looked at Ellie, at the ranch, at the creek glinting under the sun, I knew it was worth it. One night, as I sat on the porch, Ellie joined me, her phone finally quiet. "Dad," she said, "you think we'll ever be free of them?" I looked out at the land, the hills rolling under a sky full of stars. "Maybe not," I said. "But we'll keep fighting. And we'll keep winning. Because this is ours." She smiled, leaning against me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something like peace. The HOA had come for my ranch, but they'd left on stretchers, metaphorically, legally, and maybe a little physically. And we were still standing. The weeks after the verdict were a strange mix of triumph and tension. The ranch felt alive again, neighbors dropping by, strangers sending letters of support, even a few reporters wanting to turn our story into a documentary. Ellie was thriving, her videos now a platform for other ranchers to share their fights. But the HOA's shadow lingered. Their appeal was pending, and Amos warned me they'd likely try new tactics, legal or otherwise. I kept the rifle close, checked the fences daily, and taught Ellie how to spot trouble from a mile off. We weren't just defending the ranch now. We were defending a movement. Marta's brother, Tom, became our secret weapon. He'd hacked into Pinnacle's servers not illegally. He insisted. Just creative browsing and found a goldmine. Internal memos admitting they'd targeted my ranch to pressure others into selling. One email from Grayson himself read, "Break Harrow, and the rest will fall." Tom leaked it to Sarah, who ran it in a scathing exposé. The story hit national news, and Pinnacle's stock took a nosedive. Protesters started picketing their offices in Billings, chanting "Hollow Creek strong." I didn't celebrate, though. A wounded animal's the most dangerous, and Pinnacle was bleeding. The countersuit Amos filed was gaining traction. We weren't just fighting to keep the ranch now, we were suing for damages. For the stress, the threats, the lies. Amos was confident, but court was a slow grind, and legal fees were piling up despite the donations. I sold a few head of cattle to cover costs, hating every second of it. Those cows weren't just livestock. They were part of the ranch's heart. Ellie saw me signing the sale papers and hugged me without a word. She understood. Then came the next blow. One morning, I found the creek-dammed UPA crude pile of rocks and dirt blocking the flow, flooding my lower pasture. It wasn't natural. Someone had done it deliberately. I called Jed and Marta, and we spent hours clearing it, our boots sinking in the mud. As we worked, Jed spotted tire tracks leading to a back road fresh, deep, like from an SUV. "HOA," he growled. I nodded, my jaw tight. They were playing dirty now, trying to wear me down. That night, I rigged motion sensor lights around the property and set up a trail camera near the creek. If they came back, to catch them. The community rallied harder. Marta organized a town hall, and over 100 people showed up, ranchers, farmers, even shopkeepers who'd felt the HOA's squeeze. We shared stories, planned strategies, and started a fund to help others fight. Ellie spoke, her voice strong, telling the crowd how the ranch wasn't just land but a way of life. "They want to erase us," she said, "but we're louder than their money." The room roared, and I felt a surge of pride. My daughter was becoming a leader, and I'd never been prouder. But the HOA wasn't idle. A week later, I got a call from Sarah. "Caleb, check X," she said. I opened the app and saw a new video, not Ellie's. It was grainy, night vision footage of me clearing the creek, edited to make it look like I was tampering with county property. The caption read, "Harrow caught sabotaging public resources." My blood boiled. They'd twisted my cleanup into a crime. Comments were brutal, calling for my arrest. Ellie was furious, ready to post a rebuttal, but I stopped her. "Let's be smart," I said. "We've got the trail camera. Let's see what it caught." The footage was gold. It showed a black SUV, just like the one from that first night, pulling up to the creek. Two figures, faces unclear but wearing familiar uniforms, piled the rocks. I sent it to Sarah, who ran it alongside the HOA's video. The backlash was swift. Users tore into Pinnacle, demanding accountability. The state investigation widened, and rumors swirled of federal regulators sniffing around. For the first time, I felt the tide truly turning. But I also knew Pinnacle wouldn't go down without a fight. They'd come for me again, and I'd be ready legally, physically, and with a community behind me. The final showdown came not in a courtroom but on the ranch, under a sky heavy with autumn clouds. It was early October, the air crisp, the creek running strong again. The HOA's appeal had been denied. Their stock was tanking, and the state investigation was closing in. But Pinnacle wasn't done. They sent a new team. Not guards this time, but lawyers and a surveyor, claiming they needed to reassess my boundaries. I knew it was a ploy to provoke me, to find any excuse to drag me back to court. I met them at the gate, Amos at my side, Ellie filming from the porch. The community was there too, Marta, Jed, and dozens of others, their trucks lining the road, a wall of defiance. The lead lawyer, a woman named Claire, was all smiles, but her eyes were cold. Mr. Harrow, we're here to ensure compliance, she said, holding up a tablet with maps. Your boundaries are in dispute. I laughed, bitter. My boundaries have been the same for 100 years. You've got no claim. Amos stepped in, presenting our evidence, the deed, the court rulings, the leaked emails. Claire's smile didn't waver, but the surveyor looked nervous, his equipment untouched. Then Ellie posted her video, live streaming the confrontation. They're back, she narrated, her voice steady. Trying to steal our home again. But we're not alone. The stream exploded, viewers flooding in, comments pouring with support. Claire noticed, her composure slipping. This is private business, she snapped, but the crowd jeered, and someone shouted, not when it's our land. The surveyor packed up, muttering about unsafe conditions. Claire left with a warning. This isn't over, Harrow. But it was. The next day, Sarah broke a story that sealed Pinnacle's fate. Evidence of bribes to state officials, uncovered by Tom's digging. The feds swooped in, freezing Pinnacle's assets. The HOA dissolved, its leaders facing charges. My countersuit settled out of court. The payout enough to cover our losses and fund the community's fight for others. The ranch was safe, truly safe, for the first time in months. That night, we held a bonfire at the ranch. Neighbors, friends, strangers who'd become allies, they all came, bringing food, music, stories. Ellie danced with Marta's kids, her laughter brighter than the flames. Jed raised a toast to Caleb, Ellie, and every one of us who said no to greed. The crowd cheered, and I felt the weight of the fight lift, replaced by something stronger, hope. I walked to the creek, alone, the stars reflecting on its surface. This land had tested me, broken me down, and built me back up. It had taught Ellie strength, shown a community what unity could do. The HOA had come with guards, with lies, with power, but they'd left on stretchers metaphorically, beaten by truth and grit. I thought of my grandfather, my father, and knew they'd be proud. This ranch wasn't just mine. It was ours, a testament to what we could hold onto when we fought together. As I stood there, Ellie joined me, her phone finally off. We did it, Dad, she said. I nodded, my arm around her. We did. And we'll keep doing it, for as long as this land's ours. The creek sang softly, the night stretched wide, and for the first time in a long time, I knew we were home free, unbroken, and stronger than ever.